Dan with Hartville RV Center, here to show you a walkthrough on a vintage travel trailer. Now there's going to be a lot of similarities in between models on the vintages and Vistas that we have. So there might be some things in this one that aren't on yours, but things like the appliances, jacks, stabilizer jacks, a lot of things are going to be fairly similar, so we're going to show you how to operate those. Some things, locations are going to be different, like your water heater might be in the back on one and up front on another, but I'll show you little tips and tricks on how to find those in different locations. So we'll start up front. The electric jack, most of them come with electric jack, some of them might have a manual crank one. On the electric ones, they are battery powered, so as long as you have a good battery, they will run. For some reason your battery's dead or the motor's bad or something, you still can manually crank it by opening up the top access port and installing the included wrench and be able to run it up and down. So in this case of a power failure or something, it's a good idea to hang on to this wrench to be able to operate that, to get it on and off your vehicle. Now it does, like I mentioned, work off a 12-volt battery. If your battery is dead, you can plug in your trailer to an outlet or to your tow vehicle to be able to charge the battery to operate it as well. So you get some options on that. The tongue jack, once you disconnect, is also what you're going to be used to level it front to back. If you need to level it side to side, you do want to drive your wheels up on some blocks like Lynx levelers or like a 2x6, cut maybe a foot long to be able to level side to side, but you would use your tongue jack to run it up and down. Your propane tanks, most of them are going to come with the 20-pound cylinders. Most of them are going to have two, and there are options to get the larger 30-pound ones. But whenever there are two tanks, you are going to have an automatic switch regulator. And when it has red on the indicator, it's letting you know that there's no pressure to the system. When you do open up the tanks and add pressure to the system, that will disappear to clear. And whatever side that this arrow is pointed to will be your primary tank. So right now it is pointed to the right. These are empty, so that's why it's still red right now, but when they're filled up, that will go to clear. So as you use it, it'll be using one side, and then once it gets empty, it'll automatically switch to draw from the other side. When that happens, this will go back to red to let you know that that main tank is empty. When that happens, switch this to point to the other tank, disconnect this, and go get it filled. While it's disconnected, you can still use everything else inside off of this tank. It's not going to be drawing air in or anything, but in case you're in the middle of cooking a meal or something like that, you don't have to fret, you don't have to shut everything down. You can still operate it until you get the other tank back on there. Once you get the tank back on and filled, connect it, open it up, let it deplete from this side, and then it'll automatically switch to the other, and you just repeat the process. All of our RVs are going to be coming equipped with a 12-volt deep cycle battery. This unit just has two connections, one going to your negative, one going to your positive. The red's going to be positive, white is negative on this one. Some are black, some are white, but you always want to double check. If for some reason you aren't sure, you can always follow the positive wire back down underneath. There is a junction box underneath there with resettable fuses. Sometimes there's a blade fuse, but all the vintages do use resettable fuses underneath the frame. All you do is just follow the cords down, you'll be able to find them. The battery will have a box and a cover on it when it comes installed. Now it does have these two caps on here that you want to take off periodically, just a handful of times a year. With these caps removed, you'll see 3 holes and you'll see water inside the battery. If they ever look low or dried up, add distilled water. Never add tap water. It can damage the battery. If you do more dry camping where you deplete the battery, recharge it, deplete it, recharge it, you definitely want to check the water levels more often because they will boil more if they had a low charge. But if you're at a full hookup site all the time, really just once or twice a year to check that, because they do have smart converters inside that'll charge it a little bit, but once it's full it'll stop charging it, so it's not like they're getting boiled over often. You do always want to make sure to travel with a good charged battery. There is a breakaway cable, which I'll show you here in a second, that if for some reason the trailer becomes dislodged from the vehicle, the breakaway will pull and the brakes will be engaged, but only if you have a good traveling battery. If you have the battery disconnected or the battery is dead, that disconnect switch isn't going to do you any good. This is your breakaway cable. This is just a safety device. When you're traveling down the road, you do want this attached to your vehicle, not on the chains or anything, but on your vehicle itself. Helps a lot of times to get a carabiner to easily take it on and off. What will happen is if the trailer comes disconnected from the vehicle, this will pop out and it'll engage the brakes on the trailer. So it's just a safety device. Don't use this as a parking brake. Always make sure it's inside. Never remove it. If it does come out, just make sure to put it back in within a few minutes, because if it is left out, it can damage the box and damage your brakes, and it drains your battery. So always make sure that this is put back into place. It is just a safety device. These are the stabilizer jacks. You're going to have 2 in the front, 2 in the rear. And what they do is they just stop the unit from shaking around. You do want to make sure to get it as level as possible before putting these down. Do not use these to try to level it. They do not support the weight enough to be able to lift it side to side, tweak it or anything. And literally they just stop it from shaking around. It does come with this wrench to be able to take it up and down. You're gonna hit the ground with it. You're only gonna go about half a turn more. Just add some tension. Don't over crank it and try to lift it up. It can bend these. They do make adapters you can attach to your drill. It's a 3/4 inch socket where you can just zip it up and down a lot faster and easier. If not, the wrench does just fine. When traveling, make sure they are twisted back and retracted all the way until they come to a stop. If you are camping in a wet, muddy area, or even in grass, not a bad idea. Put a wider foot base on there, like a block of wood, or even like a Lynx levelers. Stick them under there, just gives it a wider foot base, makes it a little more stable. And maybe like the next day or two, you know, if you notice the camper's moving around a little bit, you might have to come out and just snug it back up, because if they sink into the ground, it's not going to be as stable as it was. So just kind of snug them up, just to get enough until it's done shaking around. So you have 2 water sources that are available for use. You have your city water connection and your potable water tank. City water connection is if you're using the water source from the campground. Typically they'll have a faucet there, you connect standard sized garden hose to, and connect to here. As soon as you turn on that water, everything inside is pressurized. Now you never know what the pressure is going to be coming from the campground, so I always recommend using a pressure regulator. Just attaches to the end of your hose, attaches there, and if the pressure gets too high, it will drop it down to 50 psi. Just to make sure everything inside's nothing breaks, and it does prevent leaks, because you never know what the water pressure is going to be. But once you connect water to the city connection, everything inside is pressurized. If you want to use the potable water holding tank, that's where you can take water with you. If you know you're going to a campground that doesn't have a water supply, or you know somebody's backyard, you're just out by a stream, you want to fill up with some water. It is a gravity fill. Just loosen the cap, use the bucket and a funnel or a hose inside to fill it up. Now, if you want to use your potable water, you do have to turn on the water pump inside. And that's what sucks the water into the system, pressurizes it. And the pump will run until it's pressurized, and then it'll shut off. Once you open up the faucet, the pump will run again. So it's not like it's going to make a noise the whole time you have it. It's only as it's building pressure. Typically on these, you have to check the owner's manual. So they're usually about 20 gallons, 25 gallons. Some are different sizes. But those are great because you can take the water with you, but it does add weight for travel. So you do want to take that in consideration with your gross vehicle weight rating. Whenever you're done using it, it does have a drain underneath. A little cap you removed at the bottom of the tank to let it drain out. And you just let it drain on the ground. I do recommend draining it after use, just so you don't have water sitting in there. It gets kind of stagnant. So it's a good idea to always, drain it out once you're done. But those are your 2 options. Potable water holding tank where you can fill it up, and you do have to use the water pump, or you can work off the campground water pressure using your city connection. And here's your termination valve. When you're ready to dump your tanks, you'll attach your sewer hose to the end, just the same as this cap. You might have to go to a dump station, or some campgrounds even have the sewer at the campsite. You attach your sewer hose, put it down in the sewer. You have 2 tanks. You have your wastewater holding tank and your sewage holding tank. Wastewater is going to be what they call your gray tank. It has your sinks and your shower. Sewage tank is only going to be your toilet. I always recommend doing the sewage tank first, your black tank. Get the contents out of your black tank. When it's done, close it. Open up your gray tank. It's going to be more soapy water from your shower and stuff. Kind of rinses this out, rinses out your hose. You do get the optional tank flush on this model. Not all models come with it. Some do. This one does have it. You'll see it. They can be directly above it. I've actually seen them on the door side as well, on the opposite side of the camper. So they just want to inspect it or ask your salesperson if it does come with it. But if it does come with a tank flush, what you want to do is actually open up the valve to your sewage tank for your black tank, let it drain out, and you take your water hose, attach it to your tank flush, pressurize it, and it pushes water into your tank out these small little spindles that hit the sidewalls and just help flush everything out. It also cleans off your sensors if your sensors are reading in properly. You don't have to use this, but I highly recommend it. Just helps get as much out as possible. And you let it run just a few minutes. Just most importantly, when you are using this, that the valve is open. So the water you're putting inside has somewhere to come out. Do not leave that valve closed, it'll just fill up your tank. So whenever you are done, disconnect the hose and close the valve, and you're good to go. This is your water heater. Again, it could be in different locations. Typically, they are going to be near the back side of the RV. They do work on electric or gas. You can actually use both at the same time for fast recovery. On the Vintages and Vistas, though, there'll be a little switch on the outside. It says on and off. This is your electric switch. You do have to be plugged into an outlet to be able to use this. It doesn't work off your battery. But whenever you are ready and it has water in it, when you're plugged in, flip that to on. The reason I put the switch on the outside here is so you can double check to make sure it does have water in it before you turn it on, so you don't burn up the heating element. So right now this tank is empty because this is the drain plug. If it were in and full, if you were to pull this valve open and water comes out, you know it's full. If water doesn't come out, you want to make sure to add water to the system and open up the hot spigot until water comes out. That way you know it's safe to turn on. The drain plug does have an anode rod attached to it. This is a sacrificial rod. All the minerals in the water will attack this and eat it away instead of attacking the tank. Over time, you'll see a steel rod exposed in the center. Once you see that steel rod exposed halfway through, you want to get it replaced. This could last you one season, could last you a couple years, depends on how hard the water is and how much water you're actually passing through it. I'll show you. This is an old one. This is that steel rod in the center I was talking about. This one was completely eaten away. So once it gets to that point, there's nothing left for it to attack except the tank, and that can actually severely damage your tank and cause leaks in the future. So whenever you see this exposed about halfway through, you know, it could be in sections, you want to make sure to get it replaced. But typically you'll get a couple seasons out of it. You know, I would say at least every 2 years replace it, but you're always going to be checking it when you drain it for the winter. It's not like you got to check this the entire season when you're camping, unless it was already pretty low. Then you want to keep an eye on it. But like your first season out, you know, you don't have to mess with it, take it out and inspect it. Just really at the end of the year when you go to drain your tank to empty it, you'll see how it is and you'll know whether or not it's still good to use for the next season. So I did show you the electric operation, which was the switch below. The gas switch is going to be on the inside. I'll show you that once we get in. But electric they do put outside, where the gas is on the inside. There are reset buttons. If the temperature were to get too hot, it'll trip this and cause it to turn off. If that happens, just push them in to reset it. If that happens frequently, have somebody look at it, because they shouldn't be doing that often, but periodically it is possible to get a little too hot and it'll trip the system. That's really pretty much it for the hot water tanks. Just the most important thing is you definitely want to make sure to drain it in the winter so it doesn't turn into a big block of ice. This is a 1 1/16 socket to be able to get this out. You want to make sure to use a little bit of pipe dope or Teflon tape. And when you go to seat it in, just snug it down. It's actually a little flared, so it's not even going to sit all the way down. Just enough to prevent it from leaking. That's all you need to do. Once it's in there, you can leave it in there all summer. Like I said, you don't have to take it out and inspect it at all throughout the year unless you really want to, or you don't want the water sitting inside. You're welcome to take that out every trip and drain it, but you don't have to. All right, all the Vistas and Vintages are going to come with a 30 amp connection. It can only go in one way. It does have one jagged tooth on there, so it's not like you can accidentally plug it in upside down. When you push it in, it's going to be a little at an angle. You're going to want to turn it a little clockwise to lock it into place. And then you tighten down the ring, not only to seat it better, but also prevents water and anything from getting inside as it's connected. And it is the 30 amp connection, so it's a 3-prong 30 amp. This is going to be the most common outlet you're going to find at campgrounds. Even if you go to a campsite that has a 50 amp, typically they're going to have a 50 and a 30. So 30 is definitely going to be the most common. You can get adapters to be able to plug it into your household outlet, which are typically only 15 to 20 amp. So if you do that, you're at home getting ready for a trip, you have it plugged in. You just want to be careful not to operate a lot of things inside, because even though it's a 30 amp system, when you use the adapter to go to a house, it's only now rated for 15. Mainly like your air conditioner and your microwave are the things that are really going to pull a lot of amperage to possibly trip a breaker. But you could use your lights, have your fridge on, get things ready for a trip. If you had a slide out, you can still operate your slide, things like that. But you just want to be careful whenever you do use an adapter or an extension cord. You want to limit the use of what you are using. We always want to double check the campsite, or if you're not sure, call the campground before you go there just to make sure they do have a 30 amp receptacle so you can get full use of your RV. This is going to be your furnace exhaust. This can be in different places on the outside. You really don't have to mess with this. This big block is just an access panel in case there were an issue with the furnace. Your controls are on the inside. But I did just want to warn you that this does get hot when operating the furnace. So make sure nothing's leaned up against it, little kids, dogs, anything. We don't want them touching that. And also, if you haven't used it in a while, it's not a bad idea to peek in there with a flashlight before you ever turn it on to make sure that mud daubers or bugs or anything aren't inside. They do make screen protectors that go over there that protect insects from getting in but still allow good airflow. Those aren't a bad investment, but you do want to be cautious with this when it's operating because it does get hot. A lot of the Vintages and Vistas are coming pre-prepped for a backup camera. The mount and wiring are already installed on there. This is for a specific camera. You want to talk to either Doug or John at the parts counter to find out which one goes on there. If you were to purchase your own camera, you could still technically use the wiring on the back, but you will need a different mount. So this is for a specific one, but it saves you a lot of time and labor because it is already pre-wired back there. The most important thing with the backup cameras is for them to receive power. They get power off of your marker lights. So as you're driving your vehicle, you do have to have your running lights on for the camera to have power off of your marker lights. So you can't have the camera on the whole time you're traveling, not just while you're in reverse. You can use it as kind of a rear view mirror if you wanted to. And they are adjustable to change the angles, but they're very handy to have. But this one is prepped for it whenever you see the black box. When you see these vents, these are the vents and access panel to your refrigerator. All your controls are going to be on the inside, so you really don't have to get back here much. Once, twice a year, just to inspect it to make sure everything looks okay. Clear out any cobwebs or bugs or anything. These are vented lids to allow airflow to remove the heat from the back of the fridge, so never block these off, never tape them or anything. You want to make sure they have good airflow going through. There's a little hose connected to it hanging outside. It's your condensation drip tube. So if condensation were to build up on the inside of the camper, instead of just pooling up inside, it's actually got a way to escape. So you always want to make sure that these are hanging outside of the camper so the condensation will actually come out. These are gravity fed furnaces, so you want to make sure it is level. You don't want to be on a steep incline and try to operate the furnace. It can actually damage the cooling unit. So everything inside needs to flow perfectly. You want it to be as level as possible. As long as it's level enough to camp in, sleep in, you'll be good enough to operate the fridge. You just don't want to be a steep incline front to back or side to side and operate it. It does work off electric being plugged into an outlet, or if you're boondocking, you can use a battery and your propane to run it off of gas. Because it does have direct spark ignition, so you do have to have battery to operate it as well. There is an access panel back here. If you ever have issues with the fridge not working, you can get access to that panel. There are 2 fuses on the back. The panel just pops right off. You'll see 2 fuses behind there. That's the first thing you want to check if you ever have issues with the fridge not working. But other than that, all your controls are on the inside. And again, you really don't have to get back here unless it's just periodic maintenance or you happen to have an issue. All the model Vintages and Vista Cruisers that we get in are going to have the electric awnings on them. There's just a toggle switch inside to be able to run it in or out. What's nice about these systems is that they don't have to be all the way out or all the way in. You can have it halfway out, just like this, like we don't have enough room. Maybe at your campsite there's a tree right there, or you parked a little too close to something. You can just take it out a little bit. You know, if you just want a little bit of shade over your door, you could take it out enough for that as well. They do have a pitch adjustment, which can actually only be done if the awning is out all the way. So when it's halfway out, you know, it's going to be straight going across. But when it is all the way out, you can actually pinch the sides here to adjust it up and down to drop the pitch on one side or the other. You can actually drop both sides down too if you want a little more downward slope, just extra shade on this sidewall of the camper. Now, it can roll up with these in any position. They just have to be the same position on each side. So you don't want any kind of pitch when you roll it up. You do want to make sure that they're just even on each side, but it could be all the way up or all the way down. They'll still roll up into the exact same position. When you do roll them in, just to lock them for travel, you just hold down the button until they come to a stop, which is the opposite if you're running out. If you're running the awning outward, it doesn't have an automatic stop. Once you see a valance sticking straight up and down, you want to let go of the button. If you continue to hold down the button, once it's reached fully extended, it's going to try rolling up backwards on itself. Just roll it back out and roll it back up correctly. But when you are running it in for travel, all you have to do is just hold the button in until it comes to a stop, and it's locked in place. So first, right inside the door, the placement of these are going to be different in all different models. But you are going to have the awning switch, just has in and out. Again, just make sure to hold the button in all the way until it comes to a stop. The vintages do have a lot of light switches. That's what every single one of these are. You have stair lights, awning lights, sometimes speaker lights, ceiling lights, all different ones, but they all have their own separate switches. On this model, the TV bracket is set up right inside the door, and this bracket can actually lift up and be taken outside. You have the same bracket on the outside of the unit to where you can take this TV, just unplug it, take it outside, watch a game or something while you're outside, and just bring it back in and set it up. The lower coax where it says TV, that's going to be for your cable and antenna. You want to hook to the TV. If you have something outside plugged to the auxiliary or satellite, you would use the top coax. When you have it hooked to the bottom one for antenna, you do have this little push button on the side where a green light comes on. When the green light's on, that's your antenna booster. When it's off, it selects cable. So if you're ever hooked up to cable at a campground and the picture's not coming through, this is the first thing you want to check. So make sure the light is off. So on for antenna, off for cable. Now in a lot of these vintages, you do get a DVD option, which will actually be coming through your radio. Sometimes your radio is on a different side of the camper, like it is on this one. The radio on this one's on the back wall. But they do have the AV wires for your audio video coming through the camper, and these are an output. So what you do is have your TV here, and you run, they usually include them with your owner's manual, just the AV cables from here going to your TV, and you can use your radio and CD player as a DVD player for your TV. So it's kind of nice that they already have it hooked up, because it would be very difficult to actually install a DVD player in this area, but your radio CD player is also a DVD player as well. This is your radio. Like I said before, it's radio, CD player, and DVD player. It has a lot of features on it. It comes with Bluetooth. You can even make phone calls off of this. If you have your phone connected to it, you can stream music to it. It does have an auxiliary input, a USB input. And as I told you before, the DVD player is set up to your TV. So if you're playing a DVD through here, you want to make sure that your TV is set to AV input. But the audio will also come through the speakers in the camper. You do have two sets of speakers, Zone 1 and Zone 2. Typically Zone 1's inside and Zone 2 could be outside. I have seen them reversed before, so you just have to see what they do. You could have one set on or you could have both on. If you just wanted audio coming through the TV by itself and not the speakers of the camper, just want to make sure both zones are turned off. It does have a radio antenna. It's going to be on your roof connected to your TV antenna. Some of them are connected in the same system, so if you are trying to use your radio and you notice the signal isn't that good, try using the antenna booster. Sometimes it will actually help the radio signal on these as well. But it's a good idea to check the owner's manual because there's a lot of separate features on these. You can even set alarm clocks on them and stuff, so they're very handy to have. And these do work off of the 12-volt system. So if you're just camping, you know, out in the boonies, you just want to listen to CDs, radio, you can use this off your battery. Technically the DVD player works, but your TV only works if you're plugged into an outlet. It is not a 12-volt TV, so if you want to watch movies, you do have to be plugged into shore power for that. It's your microwave, standard household microwave. It only works off 120 volts, so you do have to be plugged into an outlet for your microwave to work. It will not work off of battery power. This is your stovetop vent. It does have a light on there. When you're cooking, you do want the fan to be on. There is a vent on the outside, just to push tabs, you just lift up to be able to open up the vent. You want to make sure you're using that to blow out all the exhaust. When you go to light your stovetop, you do have 3 burners. You have a spark igniter. The spark igniter, only turn it clockwise. Never turn it counterclockwise. You can actually end up damaging it. So clockwise only. Whatever burner you want to set on, set it to the high position, and then click that until the flame is present. The same is for the oven, but this one does have a pilot light you have to light. You do have to set it to the flame. Actually hold the button down as you're turning the igniter. Once you see the flame inside light up, hold it down for another 10 seconds or so. Once it's lit, you'll let go of it. The pilot light will stay lit, and as you're ready to use it, set it to the temperature you want, and it'll turn on and off to maintain the temperature. When you're done cooking, if you plan on using it again, put it back to the flame to keep the pilot lit. But if you're done with it, just set it back to off and it'll turn off the pilot light. It does have a glass stovetop cover. You want to make sure this is down for travel. You don't want to lift it up, and as you're traveling it could fall down. So always make sure it's in the downward position during travel. And another important thing with the cover too is you never want to put it down when the burners are hot. It can definitely damage the glass. If these were really hot and you go to put that down, it could damage the coloring on there. It could actually crack the glass. So be very cautious with that. Just make sure it's all cooled down before you put down the cover. So refrigerator controls, you do have to open up the door to get to it. It's very simple. It just has an on and off switch on top. You're going to hear a beep. Once it's on, you have 2 selections. You have auto, when this is plunged in. You push that out, it'll be on gas. Auto mode goes off your main power source. So if you're plugged into electric, it'll be on electric, but if you lose power, somebody unplugs your cord, power failure to campground, it will automatically switch to gas to keep it running for you. Right now we're actually plugged on battery, so it did just switch to gas to try to run it. The reason they give you a gas option only is if you are plugged in, but you do want to make sure it is going to light. Say maybe you're leaving a campsite for the day or something like that. You can always push this button out to the gas, and it'll go through an ignition cycle. And if it does light, then you're good. You can just set it back to auto, and it'll go off your main power source. If it does not light, this little check light will come on. And what causes that most often is that you just ran out of propane, or maybe you forgot to open up your cylinders. But if that does happen, you know you have propane. All you do is just turn it off. And right now it's going to beep at me because I have our propane turned off. So I'll let you know that it did not light. If that's the case, just turn it off. Wait a second. Turn it back on, and it'll do the cycle again. Just do that. Make sure it does light. After 30 seconds, if this doesn't turn on and beep at you, then you know it lit. You can always go to the outside compartment and double check. You can usually hear the flame, or you can look for it just to make sure. But there is no indicator on here saying it is lit. It just tells you if it does not light. The temperature control for the fridge is going to be on the inside on the right. On the far fin, it's a little adjustment, just a thermocouple, moves up and down. Highest position is coldest, and lowest position will make it kind of cool. I always recommend just leaving it in the top position, and if you see things start to freeze inside of the fridge, then you just back it down a little bit. If you ever have questions on the controls, I've actually been putting a nice sticker inside the fridge compartment door telling you everything I just told you as well. So there's good information on there. This is your distribution center. On this unit it is directly below the fridge, but it can be in other places all throughout the camper. Sometimes it can be under the bed, but typically they're out in the main hallway. You will have all the breakers for everything that runs off 120 volt. Your 30 amp breaker is going to be your main breaker that can kill all the rest of them. but every other circuit will have its own dedicated breaker. All your 12-volt items will have blade fuses. And they also have a light indicator next to it if the fuse does blow. So I have to give you a little window here. If you ever see a red light glowing, you know you have a blown fuse. You can actually pinpoint exactly which one it is. And they do have a list on the side of which circuit they go to. Most of them are going to be 15 amp fuses. You do have a 2 and a 3 at the top. And you also have 40 amp fuse right in the center. And this is a reverse polarity fuse. This actually protects the system. If you were to hook up your battery cables backwards, this fuse would blow to protect the converter inside. So if you ever hook up your battery and nothing's working, come in here and you check this fuse. If that fuse is bad, check your battery connections. Most likely they're reversed. Your air conditioner, if it is a non-ducted one, most of the vintages are going to have this, where you're going to have the controls right on the air conditioner itself. You don't have a wall thermostat for these. You're going to have 3 different settings for the fan and 3 different settings for the air conditioner. The gray side is going to be for the fan, low, medium, and high speeds. And then the blue side is going to be for your cooling for your AC. The thermostat on the side is going to go to the compressor for the air conditioner. So the fan will constantly run, but the compressor will turn on and off based on where you have the temperature setting. If it's too cold, just back it down towards the heat a little bit. It does have a little indicator saying optional heat at the top. What that is, it's for an electric heat option. It's just a heating strip. It'll actually install right above the filter, and it'll give you an electric heat option when you're at a campground. They do heat up really well, but typically, you know, the furnace works better. So if you're camping, it's like 50 degrees outside, get down to like 40 at night, the furnace is going to work better. But if you're just looking for something to take the chill off on a cool night, and you don't want to waste any propane, the electric heat option is nice. They don't come with them, but if you are interested in the electric heat option, make sure to talk to your parts department and something we can order for you. This little box is going to be for your furnace control. It does have a toggle switch at the top. It says really small on there, the word off with an arrow pointed to your right. So when it's all the way to the right, it's the off position. Flip it to your left, will turn it on. The little bottom switch is your temperature control. So the furnace will turn on and off to maintain the temperature. If it is too hot, turn it to your left to back it down. If it's not hot enough, turn it to your right to kick it on. Now the furnace is on. It turns on and off to maintain the temperature. When you turn it off, the furnace will continue to run for an additional 60 to 90 seconds to clear out the combustion chamber and get all the residual gas and heat out. So when you do turn it off, just make sure to wait a little bit for it to actually fully turn off. Just below it, this is your monitoring panel. This will tell you how full or empty all your tanks are. Your gray tank is going to be your sink in your shower. You just press the button, it'll tell you how full or empty it is. Right now it's reading E for empty. As you use it, it'll work its way up to full. Same goes for your black tank, which is for your toilet tank. Right now it's reading empty. Let's pay attention to it. Once it gets near full, that's when you want to dump it out. Fresh tanks, the potable water holding tank where you can take water with you. Once you fill it, it'll read full, but as you use it, it'll deplete down to empty. And then your battery indicator goes off the right side. It says C, G, F, and L. It's charged, good, fair, and low. Press that down. Right now, our battery is at fair, and things still function. Like I just turned on the furnace. Your lights might be a little dimmer, but things will still work. Once it gets down to fair, you do want to pay closer attention to it, because once it gets down to low, that's when you'll run into problems where things might not run. Like your furnace might not run. If you had to slide out, it might not have enough power to run. So you want to make sure to plug in the unit, because when you are plugged in, it will send a charge to the battery. So it'll always read it at the charge level as you're plugged in, as long as it's working properly. But also while you're traveling, you can get a charge as well. And at the bottom it says pump. This is for your water pump. So if you're using water from your potable water holding tank, turn on your pump, and it'll pressurize. Once it builds up to pressure, it'll turn off automatically. So you just leave the switch to the on position, and as you open up faucets, the pump will kick back on to replenish the water. Up here, you also have, in this unit, the same TV bracket that you have in the living room, to where you can just take that same TV and be able to bring it inside or outside. You have the option to just kind of bounce it around. It saves you from having to get, a bunch of different TVs. This one does only have the cable and antenna output, Different models might have different setups, but this one does have the option to bring your living room TV into your bedroom or outside to watch TV outside. Something I do want to mention, you do get a free sample of this when you buy a new unit from us. This is the black tank chemical. You will add this chemical into your toilet, and what it does is just helps break everything down, liquefy it. So when you go to flush it out, it all comes out. If you don't use this, you'll get a lot of problems with stuff not breaking down. When you go to open up the valve, solids will run, or liquids will run out, but solids will build up on the inside. So you want to make sure to use the black tank chemicals. There's all different kinds out there. You do get a free sample with it, and you want to use it every time. So you use it the first time you go out, and it'll be good up until you flush your tank. When you flush your tank out, the chemical runs out with it. So the next time you go to use it, you want to make sure to add more chemicals. And lastly, one of the most important things that you can do for your RV is keep up on the maintenance. There are a few safety things you want to pay attention to, like getting your bearings repacked. You want to make sure to do that every 12,000 miles or once a year, whatever comes first. If you're doing a lot of cross-country trips, pay attention to your miles. If you're getting close to that 12,000, make sure to get them done. If you don't want to pay attention to your miles, just make sure to get it done once a year if you're just kind of doing more local trips. On most of the vintages and Vistas that we have, the spare tire is actually going to be located underneath the bed because they don't have the bumper mount or anything. You just lift it up, you'll see a board laying under there, lift that up, and there's your spare tire. Just some maintenance stuff. Everything on the outside is going to be sealed. You'll see all your marker lights will have like silicone sealant around it. Just periodically keep an eye on that, make sure nothing has an opening or nothing's been cut or sliced from like a tree branch or something. And more importantly, the roof. You definitely want to keep an eye on the roof. Now, the Vistas and Vintages do have the solid fiberglass piece going around, so you don't have the rubber roof, which is real nice because the fiberglass is more durable. So you don't have to worry about tree branches, stuff scraping it or anything. But you do have things on top that are installed, and then they put a lap sealant over that to prevent water from getting inside. So you at least twice a year hop up and check the sealant, make sure it wasn't peeled back or cracking or opening, because it will need reseal to prevent any kind of water leak from getting inside. Another real important thing about these roofs, and they are safe to walk on, but you want to be very cautious if it's any kind of wet, from rain or condensation, because it can get very slippery. So just be very careful if you ever have to climb up on one of these roofs. But you definitely want to make sure to get up there at least twice a year to inspect it, make sure there's no openings, cracks, damages, things like that. If you aren't comfortable doing that, you can ask us to do it. We can make it part of a yearly thing for you, something to inspect. Just some other safety things. Every RV is equipped with a fire extinguisher, which is going to be by your entrance door. It is going to have a green button on top. Press down. As long as it pops back up, it still has a charge. If you push it down and it never stays down, that means it's lost its charge and want to get it replaced. It is a BC rated fire extinguisher, so it's rated on liquid and electrical, so it can be used on kitchen fires, grease fires. You will have a 9-volt smoke detector on your ceiling, and then you also have a carbon monoxide detector, which is going to be hardwired in. This one happens to be by the front door. They can be in other locations, typically underneath dinette booths or in the main hallways, but close to the kitchen. And again, these are hardwired, so as long as you have power to the RV, those do function. You don't have to worry about changing batteries on those or anything.